My dear friend, amidst economic news reports filled with the gloom of inflation and crises, you still regularly receive invitations to open credit cards with huge limits and attractive cashback offers. You feel like you are winning against the system, protecting the family's standard of living by intelligently using financial leverage for spending. But the truth is, you have just stepped into one of the most cruel and sophisticated psychological traps of modern capitalism. You are absolutely not winning, you have personally slipped an incredibly sturdy invisible chain around your own neck. And you smiled as you signed to confirm your own life sentence of slavery. Throughout the long and bloody history of mankind, slavery always required iron chains, cold and dark prisons, and brutal coercion by force from those in power. That primitive exploitation system proved too expensive to maintain, frequently encountering bloody uprisings from the oppressed, and creating a resentful workforce with incredibly low productivity. The greatest minds of the financial elite realized a spine-chilling truth. That is, to rule a person most perfectly, you must absolutely not imprison their physical body. Instead, you must create an absolute illusion of personal freedom, while silently misappropriating their entire future time and life force. And so, the concept of debt was upgraded from a mere commercial exchange tool to become the most sophisticated and flawless social control weapon ever invented. Look at the standard symbols of a successful life in modern Western society today. You drive a shiny luxury car off the lot, proudly walk into a large house with a lush green lawn in a peaceful suburb, and fill your living space with the most advanced technological devices. You delude yourself into thinking you own a massive amount of assets, which is the clearest evidence of your own efforts and outstanding talent. But the cold truth is, you do not own any of those material items. Huge banks and credit organizations are the real owners, while you are just a diligent housekeeper spending your own pocket money to protect and maintain assets for them. Everything you are enjoying is actually just amenities advanced by the system, in exchange for your absolute obedience over the next 30 years of your life. To understand the bottomless cruelty of this machine, we must look directly into the reactor core of the global macroeconomic system. Currency in the modern world is not backed by gold, silver, or any material asset with independent intrinsic value. The entire amount of money circulating in the economy, from the banknotes in your wallet to the soulless electronic numbers on a computer screen, is born from debt. Whenever an individual, an economic corporation, or a government signs a loan paper, a new amount of money is immediately created out of thin air. This leads to a shocking truth that economic textbooks often deliberately hide. That is, if everyone in the world simultaneously paid off all debts on the same day, the entire global money supply would immediately evaporate, and the human economy would completely collapse. The modern financial capitalist system is actually a giant creature living parasitically on the people's debts. It doesn't just want you to borrow money, it craves and mandates that you be deep in debt so that it can continue to exist and swell. Every gear of the economy, from the growth of the stock market, the boom of the real estate market, to the profit margins of giant retail corporations, is lubricated by the credit blood of consumers. You are constantly encouraged to spend beyond your own earning capacity, not because the system truly cares about your happiness or quality of life. They need you to borrow to create artificial purchasing power, helping to push asset prices to new heights, thereby further enriching those holding shares and means of production at the top level of the power pyramid. However, the ultimate purpose of debt does not just stop at brutally extracting economic profits. Its truest and most terrifying power lies in the ability to tame and neutralize all resistance from the working class. A completely free worker who does not carry a single cent of debt is a potential threat to the stability of the ruling system. They can easily strike to demand higher wages. They can immediately quit if the work environment is too toxic, or they can start a business to compete directly with their own bosses. But once you have signed a 30-year mortgage contract, combined with car installments and monthly credit card debts surrounding you, you have voluntarily cut off your own wings of freedom. You never dare to take risks. Never dare to speak up against injustice. And obediently accept all workplace oppression, just because of the extreme fear of not having money to pay the bills when the end of the month arrives. This process of brainwashing and enslavement is designed to start very early, as soon as you have just stepped into the doorway of adulthood. The education industry has been sophisticatedly restructured into a giant debt printing machine, brainwashing 18-year-olds into thinking an expensive university degree is the only path leading to success and life transformation. They force young people, those who have not yet had any clear concept of financial management, to carry on their shoulders student loans of tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars. When a student has just stepped out of the school gates, they do not step into a world of endless opportunities as advertised. They step straight into an invisible prison cell, carrying a massive debt on their back, and are forced to accept any exploitative job thrown at them to start a long, weary string of days as a debt-paying slave, to maintain the illusion of progress and encourage debtors to continue the exhausting game. The system has created an extremely excellent psychological manipulation tool called the credit score. They turn borrowing into a highly addictive video game, where your score will determine your social status and purchasing power. We are educated from childhood that a high credit score is a measure of prestige, good morality, and financial maturity. But in reality, that number does not reflect the actual amount of assets you hold in your hands at all. A credit score never measures your wealth, it only measures your level of obedience and profitability to banking institutions. A person who is completely debt-free and financially free will have a terrible credit score because they are useless and bring no profit to the credit system. The cruelty of this trap reaches its peak when it is perfectly combined with another weapon of mass destruction, invisible inflation. When central banks frantically print money to rescue failing corporations and finance budget deficits, the purchasing power of the money in your pocket is diluted mercilessly. The prices of everything, from food and energy to healthcare services, skyrocket, while your real wages remain almost stagnant or grow extremely minutely. To maintain a basic standard of living for your family, you have no choice but to swipe your credit card more and borrow even more to fill that gap. Inflation and debt form a tightening pincer, squeezing the last drops of sweat from the middle class. The faster you run on the financial treadmill, the deeper you sink into the pit of exhaustion, while banks still regularly collect massive interest, regardless of whether the economy is in a recession or not. The monthly interest payments that you extract from your sweat and tears to pay obediently are actually the greatest and most silent wealth transfer flow in human history. Money is neither naturally created nor destroyed, it only moves from the pockets of exhausted workers at the bottom of society and flows back up to the top of the pyramid into the accounts of a small elite group. When you pay a 20% interest rate on a newly purchased television installment, you are not buying an electronic device for entertainment. You are selling dozens of hours of your future weary labor to finance luxury vacations and fat dividends for the financial magnates. You are voluntarily turning yourself into a plowing machine, diligently creating wealth to dedicate to those who already possess so much money they cannot spend it all in many lifetimes. To ensure that you will never awaken and realize your chains, the media machine and advertising industry will continuously bomb your mind day and night. They brainwash you with a toxic consumer culture, equating happiness and self-worth with owning the most fashionable material items. When you feel empty, exhausted, and bored with tedious wage labor, they will gently advise you to reward yourself with an expensive item to relieve stress. Shopping becomes a temporary psychological therapy, a pain-killing drug that helps you forget the misery of reality. But every time you splurge to buy that fleeting joy, you further extend your own contract of slavery. You work frantically to earn money. Use that money to buy useless things to comfort yourself for having to work so hard, and then must continue to borrow to maintain that dead-end loop. The system even sophisticatedly sugarcoats these poison pills with fine words called convenience and smart financial leverage. Fake financial experts on social media constantly advise you to use other people's money to get rich, encouraging you to go into debt to invest in risky bubble markets. They paint rosy visions of using credit cards to accumulate reward points in exchange for free flights or 5-star luxury resort nights. But they deliberately hide a spine-chilling truth behind the velvet curtain. That is, all those flashy incentive programs are financed by the very blood, tears, and extortionate penalty interest rates of debtors who have slipped and fallen. When you smile and enjoy a trip using credit card reward points, you are indirectly spending on the bankruptcy and despair of families being foreclosed on by the system. It is a ruthless zero-sum game where the house is always the final winner, while you are just pawns tearing each other apart and destroying one another. The deepest essence of this game has absolutely nothing to do with the soulless numbers printed on banknotes or displayed on screens. The only currency with ultimate value in this universe is time and the limited life force of a human being. When a bank grants you a mortgage, they are not handing you money or prosperity. They are buying out your future at an astonishingly cheap price. Every cent of principal and interest you must pay over the next decades represents the hours you must spend away from your family, passions buried in darkness, and youthful days squeezed dry in offices without sunlight. You are not borrowing money to buy a house or a luxury car. You are selling out the most precious years of your life, tributing your own existence to an unfeeling system that never knows satisfaction. Once you have slipped past the boundary of financial safety, the machine will immediately strip away its friendly mask and activate the most cruel punitive mechanisms. Late fees and penalty interest rates pile up exponentially, turning a tiny mistake into a black hole that swallows all your efforts to save yourself. The legal system and debt collection agencies will be fully mobilized to turn your life into a living hell. They will harass you with threatening calls at midnight, smear your honor before your relatives, freeze your bank accounts, and foreclose on every last material item you own. Humiliation and extreme fear will break every will to resist, forcing you to continue toiling in hopelessness, just to pay interest that you clearly know you will never be able to fully pay off the principal. You have officially become a life prisoner in a prison that has no bars. The cruelest and naked truth is that you can never escape this system by playing according to the rules they have designed to imprison you. Those who created the game will never provide you with the tools to destroy it. As long as you still crave social validation, as long as you are obsessed with frivolous status symbols, and as long as you believe that borrowing from the future to spend in the present is wisdom, you will forever be locked in the cycle of poverty and exhaustion. True liberation does not start with you working frantically overtime to earn more money. It only begins when a cognitive shock strikes your mind, helping you see through the disgusting illusions of convenience and status. It begins when you are cold and ruthless enough with yourself to swing the sword and cut off every credit tentacle digging deep into your flesh. The most pitiable person is not the one empty-handed at the bottom of society, but the one wearing dozens of expensive brands, living in a luxury villa, yet jumping in fear every night whenever the phone rings from the bank demanding debt. A flashy standard of living inflated by financial leverage is never the definition of prosperity. It is merely a fragile screen hiding extreme despair. True wealth is the power of refusal, the privilege of living a life without owing anyone, and the capacity to keep your soul still amidst a world frantically racing after illusions. The choice is in your hands. Become a cold, ruthless outlier who rejects every credit temptation to personally create your own kingdom of freedom. Or continue to drown in the intoxication of convenience, and obediently act as a mindless puppet, dedicating your entire life to an exploitative machine that never knows where to stop. The entire autopsy you have just followed is based completely on historical data and sociological observations for purely educational purposes. Please note that this content is not financial advice or a personal investment guide. Every financial position is a unique story with different variables. Therefore, Consulting with qualified professionals is a necessary step before you make any decisions related to your assets. If you do not want to wait until the decline becomes irreversible to start being aware, please subscribe to the channel and join us as we continue to dissect the hidden corners of the system in the following content.